In this video, I'm going to be showing you guys a little bit about reflected light and specular highlights and some of that sort of stuff, when to use it, when not to use it, so check it out. Alright, welcome everyone. My name is K. Michael Russell. I am a comic book colorist and the instructor at o1artschool.com. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So it's been a little while since I've done one of these how not to color series. They're pretty popular. You guys like these videos. And I realized it'd been a little while because I came across a tweet on Twitter, and I wanted to share it with you guys before I get in this video because I just thought it was funny. It said also watched a few videos from K. Michael Russell on YouTube about what not to do when coloring comics, and I'll be recoloring everything I've done so far because I've done every last one of them. Today can go kick rocks. I found that funny in a good way. He's learned something, right? So that's the point of this series, is to go over all the things that I've done in the past that were wrong, things that I see from students in my courses. There just seem to be things that are almost universally done by beginners that are almost always incorrect. And those are the things that I try to talk about. And in this video, I want to talk about reflectivity, I guess, surface texture. You might could also call this video. What I see a lot from beginners is they'll color skin the same way that they color a shirt, a piece of metal, a plant. Same amount of light, same amount of shadow. And I want to show you guys some real world examples first of how this is different, and how smooth a texture is basically determines the sort of highlight that you're going to see on whatever it is that you're coloring. So in the first example here, and let's get my trusty drawing device here. So this is a set of, I think they're supposed to be pool balls, but they're all one color. The point is they're very shiny, and the reason they're very shiny is because they're very smooth. And so it's like a little round spherical mirror, basically. You can see let's get a different color here. You can see the lights overhead. We can even count them. There's 5 overhead lights. There's some windows back here. Here's the guy. If we got really close, you could even see the guy taking the picture. Here's the camera. Here's his head. So it's a very reflective object. And so you get these little very tight, bright spots of light. They're called specular highlights. Specular meaning they're specular. I don't actually know what specular by definition means, but that's what these are called, specular highlights. So it's a round ball, specular highlights. So let's look at a different round ball. Now, if I was a beginner colorist and didn't know any better, I might put highlights on this thing. But as you can see, it shouldn't have them. Okay, this is a basketball, which is normally made of leather, and leather is not as reflective as a pool ball, of course. So you can still see the highlight, but it's much broader. It's much more diffuse. And all light is, all color is that we're seeing the light reflected off the object. So it's more concentrated here because the surface is much smoother. So it's not diffusing it really almost at all. It's whatever is hitting it, it's reflecting right back to us. Whereas with this, it's much, much smoother. The light could be just as bright. It wouldn't make a difference. You're not going to get a specular highlight on a basketball, okay? Unless it's wet, but we'll get to that. All right, I got another example for you. This is a purse, man bag, something. I don't know. I won't discriminate. So look at the material on this canvas stuff. I guess whatever this is. I don't know what material this is, but it's not very reflective. Okay. The brightest parts of it are not that much brighter than the darkest parts of it. It's a little bit. You can especially see it over here. This area versus this area. But that's about as bright as it gets, and that's about as dark as it gets. Because items that aren't very smooth, this is obviously a very rough, texture. If we get in here really close, you can see. So there's not a lot of contrast in the difference in the light and shadows, and that's an important thing to understand. Because typically, when you've got an object that is not very smooth and it's got a rough texture, like the basketball, there's much less contrast. If you look at the color picker over here, if I pick, from this area and then pick from this area, it's in the brightest part, it's getting pretty bright, but it's not getting all the way to white. And then on the kind of this middle tone is still pretty bright. So, the value of this is not changing very much. And now it gets a little bit darker as we get down toward the bottom, but when you go back and look at the pool ball, it's completely different. You've got basically pure white right next to, a much darker value there. That's the first thing to understand is that surface texture matters. It depends on the smoothness of the object to determine how it should be rendered. So looking at the purse again, there's actually two different fabrics here. If you look at this this piece of whatever this is, I don't know. This actually looks like a little bit more leather. Now it's not as shiny as the ring. You can see the ring is very bright, very dark, a lot of contrast because it's very, very smooth. But less contrast from here to here, We've got a little bit of a highlight on there. So this is, if we're talking about a range of smoothness, with 3 being the smoothest and 1 being the roughest, then we've kind of got we've got like 3, 2, 1, So 1 being the smoothest, 2 kind of in the middle, and then 3 being the roughest. So it's really all 3 examples kind of in one piece. And I found one more example of just a ring. It's metal, it's very shiny. So you get these really hot specular highlights, right around those objects. So let's look at this in like a real world scenario. So if I was a beginner and I didn't know any better, I might color this page like this, where I have just kind of a shadow. Let's see, let's get above this. There we go. So we've got our shadow, we got shadows, we got a shadow. So it's really just kind of a two-tone thing. We're just looking at shadows here. The phone is colored the exact same way as her sweater. So we're not describing the texture of the phone at all. And, or her skin very much for that matter. Skin's pretty reflective. It's not going to be as reflective as this phone is if it's one of those. You kids don't even probably know what this is, but it's an old handset from a telephone. And they were usually plastic and they were very reflective normally. So, but we're not describing that very well as it currently stands. So whenever you're coloring something, you always want to make sure you're thinking about what is it made of? How reflective is it? And if you don't know, Google it like I did, find some pictures. So if I turn on all of the rendering that I did on this particular panel, you can see, if you'll notice the difference in the sweater, focus on the sweater first. And you'll notice that it gets a little bit brighter in some places, okay? Around all the shadows, it does pop in a little bit of orange in there, just to let you know that's where the light's reaching. But look at the phone. See how the phone's got these really bright, hot highlights in here? That's because the phone is more reflective. So you can really see that, and even on the skin a little bit, like on the tip of the nose, usually catches some light. Skin's a little bit more reflective. So, but this is a pretty good indication of those specular highlights will make an object look more like whatever it's made of, instead of just looking like a blob, which is normally not what you want. And I pulled a couple of different examples here. I'll go to that one in a second. So this is I didn't color this, and if you've skipped ahead in the video to this point, this is not an example of how not to color. This is an example of how to color. This is Matt Wilson colored this, and it actually is basically an exact illustration of what I was talking about on the purse example. So we really have 3 different textures going on here for the sake of our purposes. We've got the shiny metal, we have the skin, and then we've got this material here on on her costume. And what Matt did here was all 3 are rendered differently. Okay, so if you look at this closely, the red part, this is more of a regular fabric, kind of thing we're assuming here. So all he's done, there's 1 pass of light here. It's basically 2 tones. You've got the shadows over here and the light over here. And that's all there is, because it's not a highly reflective material. It's just the light's hitting it here and the shadows on the other side, and that's all there is to it. Now in the middle is skin. Just like I said earlier, skin's not dull and it's not super reflective, it's kind of in the middle. So you can see what he's done. We've got more layers going on here, not layers as in Photoshop layers, but more layers of light and shadow going on here. We've got this really bright, hot, yellow light. we've kind of got this middle tone, and then we've also got some shadow colors. And it looks like that's about the only thing that was used here is just the dark shadow color, kind of the middle color, and the bright yellow color. But adding more colors means more reflective. Okay, and that's what he's done here. And then the third part of this is the metal on her outfit and on her arm over here. So you can see that, for example, if we zoom up on the arm, this same light, we can trace this light down, and it comes all the way down through here. But look at the underside. Okay, so on her skin, we've got all of this pretty much in one color. Okay, we've got the darkest parts of the skin along the side here, and we've got this middle tone. But you can see what he did on the metal is we've still got the shadow shape here, but inside that shadow, you've got that reflected color. And even in the reflected color, you've got a specular highlight. You know, he's showing that's how shiny this is. Just let you know this is basically chrome, because even in the reflected light, we have a specular highlight. You know, so that's telling you that that's a very, very reflective item. Now, he's also doing some very, very subtle glowing effects. You can barely see this, but you can see that some of this white is spilling into the black here. If you look at along that black line, you can see that he's pulling a little bit of that white over the lines, and what that does is it gives it that kind of it gives that kind of glowy effect that we're looking for here. Now, there are exceptions to every rule, as you guys are probably well aware. And I pulled up this example. It's from that same issue of Hack Slash. When skin gets wet, or when most objects get wet, they tend to get more reflective. They tend to get more reflective. I have a bag of candy on my desk that I just hit. And so here, like this guy is chilling out in the bathtub, he's more reflective. I've got more specular highlights on him. These really hot, you know, very, very bright white highlights, and it makes it look like his skin is wet. It also tends to darken most objects too. Like if you go outside and spray water on your sidewalk, the sidewalk's going to get darker, because what's happening is, I'll actually illustrate this for you guys. So let's say that we're looking at like a cross-section side view of wet concrete. Okay, so if to give you guys something to go off of here, here's like a flower sticking out of it. So that's the angle we're looking at. We're looking at it sideways. So if the sun's hitting over here, then this is going to reflect the color of the light from the sun back to you, and the sky and everything else. But when you've got water on a surface like this, the water is cutting down on the amount of light that's getting to the concrete, because it's reflecting most of it. Because water is very reflective. So that's why when you spray down a driveway, or after you wash your car or something, it looks darker, because the sun's not reaching the surface of like it was before. So that's really what I wanted to get across to you guys in this video, is to vary up your textures. And I don't mean texture like, you wouldn't grab the concrete texture, like, the actual surface texture of your objects. Some of them are going to be smooth, and those should have more of these specular highlights, and you've got other areas that are rougher. You wouldn't want to put specular highlights on a sweater. A sweater doesn't have specular highlights, okay? So I hope you guys have enjoyed the video. If you're looking for something a little bit more fundamental, like if this is a little over your head, or you're looking for something for a beginner, I've got a free beginner training. I've got a link to that in the description, as well as links to my online courses and Patreon and all that good stuff. So be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a thumbs up on the video if you want to see more of these, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.